Hi there. My name is Scott Marker. I'm with Network in Action. That's a franchise out of Houston, Texas. I'm the first franchise owner here in Idaho, and it's a once a month professional networking groups I run. And it's comprised of local, high caliber business owners that are experts in their fields and decision makers. And off of that, I came up with this podcast to bring in experts in their field here local in Treasure Valley, Idaho, and talk about topics that seem to be hot at the time. So today I have Chris Adams, and go ahead and introduce yourself, Chris.
Hey, Scott, appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it because we've got a lot to talk about, right? There's kind of something going on out there in the world, in the cyber world and on the internet that really is a big, dangerous threat to our organizations.
Yeah.
And it has to do with email. And the thing is that we've all heard of, email, right? Email's been around forever, and everyone has always tried to get us to download something and put something malicious and a virus on our computer to do whatever, right? We're used to that. But that's still happening, right? And we see that in the forms of like ransomware and Cryptum Locker and some other things that are really, really dangerous. So I'm absolutely saying that you got to be cautious of anything that you download onto your computer. But
Right.
I think that there's a bigger threat that's going on that they're really not talking about how dangerous it really, really is. And what I wanted to do was I really wanted to share kind of what goes on behind the scenes with this email hacking to kind of put the pieces together to really empower our business owners and even employees, because they go hand in hand.
Okay.
So really the thing for us that we're going to talk about today is email hacking or email exploits, but not really in the form of like malware or viruses or stuff like that. What I want to talk about is this term called social engineering. Okay. So what is?
I've heard of it, but not when in regards to security.
Yeah. So think about this. The question is, have you been socially engineered? Right. And you're going like, well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, we're going to talk about that because social engineering, like I said, it's bigger than email hacking or email spoofing. There's something bigger going on. So what social engineering does is, and what makes it so dangerous is that it preys on human weakness. And we see them in the forms of phishing emails, right? Are we familiar with the phishing emails, right? It's an email that comes to you that's phishing for information. What's interesting is those phishing campaigns aren't just happening in email. We're seeing them on gaming sites. We're seeing them on airline sites. We're seeing them on our mobile phones. We're seeing them everywhere. And really, a phishing campaign can happen on any of those platforms where you're creating an account, which is asking for two pieces of information, a username and a password. Okay. Now, I want you to think about this right for a second. So, why are they continually doing that? Well, they're doing it because most people, right? And Scott, I'm going to ask you, have you?
I'll be guilty.
No, have you in the past used the same username, maybe the same email and password throughout multiple sites?
Yes.
Yeah.
I try to make variations of them, but I'll tell you, that's timely, Chris, because as you know, because you helped me, I got a new laptop and I had to change, because it doesn't recognize anything. I had to go back through, and it was a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
But a lot of my emails were similar, and I was like, yeah, thinking that's not the best.
Yeah, exactly. So
I do use a dual authentication. So it texts me if I try to, and I'll everything I do.
Yeah, 2FA.
Is that what it's called? 2FA? Okay.
Two-factor authentication.
Okay,
and we're going to talk about that is one of the breaches. So that is really good. But that's not 100% safe. Yeah, I'm sure that you didn't do that. Okay, so here's the thing. When you go to a website and it wants you to create an account and whether it's for the airline, whether it's for the credit card, the bank,
it's for everything you do. Rewards programs, they're all the same. I mean, it gets tiring because every time yes. So it's just relentless now because every single thing you do, because more people are shopping online. Oh, hey, why don't you set up an account with us? We'll give you rewards. So yes.
Yeah, and they want that for marketing purposes. They want us, all this other stuff, right? So a company that uses an account, right? This is kind of a pro tip, right? It's better for the company to ask you for a username, which is not your email, than it is to ask for your email, because the email is actually next to the password is the most common denominator throughout all of these sites, right? So people who are so think about when you log into your bank. Typically, your bank is not asking for your email. It's a username, right?
Username and account number, and then username and password.
Yeah. So that's one thing to be noticeable about, right? How important is security is with the people that I'm working on? Or they just want my email address and create a password. Okay, so that's number one. And the thing about it is that, the email and the passwords, like you admitted to, like I admitted to, but I'm slowly changing. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Makes us really, really dangerous, right? On the internet. Okay. So let's talk about what these bozos, right? What these boogeymen are after, right? Because what most people also don't understand is they're after both the sensitive and the non-sensitive information. Okay. Now, here's the other point that you have to understand. If you are breached or your organization is breached, there typically is no rah-rah fanfare out there that you were breached and someone is raising their hand saying, ha, 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 I got you.
Yeah. I think that's, maybe you're supposed to and stuff. I don't hear a lot of little ones. I always hear the big ones.
Well, but the big ones have to announce it from the vendor, from their side, because they've got to report it back to their employees, and they've got to report it back to their clients. That's why you hear about it. But you don't hear the who took them over, right? Yeah. If I breach into, Blue Cross of Idaho or whatever it is, I'm getting in there and I'm gathering the sensitive and non-sensitive information, whatever it is, and then I'm in and I'm out, right? They don't even necessarily know it. That's why people will come back and say, listen, we were breached a month ago, right? A month ago, because they weren't aware of it. Yeah. And then they don't even necessarily know how to do with it. Okay, here's what's interesting. This is what gets a little bit scary. What do they do with the information, right? What they do with the information is they take both your sensitive and your non-sensitive info, and they put it in the dark web. And they take your information and they sell it. Okay? So let's say boogeyman number one goes and gets this piece of information. Boogeyman number two goes to this organization, they hack there, and they get this piece of information. Okay? What's happening in the dark web in the back is they're building these user and organizational avatars. Oh, wow. So if you use the same email and password, those are common denominators, right, in a database where they're matching and putting all this stuff together.
I'm just laughing because that is scary. Okay. Because now you mention it, it's like, that would make sense because I've heard the whole dark web, not that much of it, but I hear that's exactly what they're doing is they get that information and they're selling it to people that do. And I didn't really know what, but now I know other people do what you're trying to do. They're aggregating it to kind of make a profile on me.
That's exactly what we're doing. How many times have you, I shouldn't say how many times have you, there are a lot of people that unbeknownst to them find out that their credit card was used in another state. And it was used with the correct credit card, all this to include the PIN. Yep. Or the 3-digit, CCV, or the 4-digit if it's AMX. Yep. That stuff is all being put together on the back end. Another security thing, when you go in and you see the 3 questions now, right? What street did you live on when you were in elementary school? What's your, paternal, grandmother's, maiden's, third cousin's middle name, whatever it is. All that stuff is being captured, right? So when people say, listen, we were breached, but they didn't get any sensitive information. Okay, great. Well, they got other non-sensitive information that they can put and match against a profile. Again, another set of information to build it. So there's like this really crazy, dangerous dark web that is out there creating serious threats, and it's social engineering to a whole nother level. And I think the thing for me is that most people don't understand, how they're putting all these things together. Well, anything that you put out there that's digital on the internet is susceptible to being, hacked and compromised. Okay. And we're going to talk about this. And this is the other thing. You are never going to be able to close the security hole. You're not going to be able to close the security hole because as long as there is a human and machine interaction, there's always going to be a gap. And the thing about it is that this stuff is not going away. And it's not going away because it's working. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right?
Is it now you meant because you hear all this big data, there is worth so much money, like the social media site, just giving you it for free, right? Well, it's not free. You're the product, your information that all your shopping habits, stuff, that's all being, so they're kind of doing the same type of thing, selling, big data's over here, selling the information to not saying, but more legitimate type sites. But then you have the boogeyman, the bad people, right? On the black web and stuff, selling your information, I guess the same way, right?
Well, add in this, right? So add in what you're doing on social media, right? So we know that these social media sites are selling all of our information, right? Yeah. We're being tracked all over the internet.
Yeah, and right? Real quick, and this is, I heard someone just recently that used, I won't mention it, one of the social sites for doing paid ads and stuff. And they said, and it's a local company here, they said they were scared how much information they could get on people. And I didn't get into the details, but when they said that, they didn't say it was scary how much, the social media site was giving them on data on their, potential customers. I mean, just really drilled down stuff that, I don't know. I'm just guessing. Are they right leaning?
Well, they're tracking you with pixels and they're tracking you with cookies, right?
Yeah.
So when you go to one website that's being tracked and you're being cooked on your computer, and then that's tracked, and then Facebook is, doing stuff, Google's doing stuff, they're all doing it, right? Right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's happening. So you take the data, right, that you have that's being, moved around on the dark web, and then you add in the information that they can get from you from social media. Right. They're putting together a pretty powerful, avatar that's out there.
That is just, I was already a little scared. Now you're making me more scared. It's okay. So not, we'll maybe I'll go back and come forward, but I've heard about some. So what are some things that? So let's say I'm a business owner here in the Treasure Valley, Idaho, and I have 50 employees, and I'm anyway. What type of just? I'm sure there's a lot, but like some basic things that you could do right off the bat that could help them reduce. Again, I think what you're saying is you're never going to get rid of the risk. You're just going to reduce it by implementing, and maybe reduce it a lot. Because like a lot of times they'll say, why do you leave your lights on? You're supposed to cut your bushes back and put a sign out front. You have a security system. Is to make at least look to the bad guys like less of an easy steal versus you got somebody, the doors are open, garage doors open, and there's a bunch of fancy bikes in there. Is that kind of like it is with the bad guys?
So I think there's two key points here. Number one, just what you were talking about. You got to keep your front door locked to keep the honest guys out. Right. Think about, in our neighborhoods where we're hearing about people got their cars broken into, and their car was broken into, but my car wasn't broken into. And really the difference between those two is the fact that my door is locked and their door wasn't.
I've heard that over and over again. Yes.
Right. So my great grandfather used to say, listen, I keep the front door open to keep the honest guy out, because here's the reality. If someone wants to get into your organization, they're going to get into your organization. I mean, there's just so many ways to get that. So if you look at think about cybersecurity or information security, whatever you want to call it, as a bullseye, right? And you have the center of the bullseye. As they come in, right, from the outside, what we do to protect organizations is we add these layers of security, right? And there's a lot of them that we can do: hardware, software, physical, logical, practical is kind of the three things that we talk about here. And I'm not going to get into that because I think it's out there, right? But here's a couple of things business owners, right, should be aware of. Number one is, what is the password policy you have set in your organization, right? So think about this. What is the password policy for your accounting department? What's the password policy that the AP and the AR and the controller are using, who can access? Well, think about all the software that they're using on offsite. QuickBooks is hosted. The payroll now is hosted. HR is now hosted. Yep. Who is responsible for managing, and what's the policy that we're using? And more importantly, what are we using to enforce those policies with those sites, right? You have to have a really good password policy in your organization. You have to do it, right? Because think about it. If you have someone, a controller that doesn't use a tough password to the bank, right? To the bank's website, right? How many of us are doing online banking in our organizations?
Yeah.
A lot of them. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so you have to have a really good password policy. What is your password policy? That's number one.
In a past life, nothing frustrated me more as an employee, but I get it. But still, employees aren't always the most receptive. But I mean, it's been however much time, we're supposed to change all our passwords again, or even on a site or something. And I tell you, as an employee, that frustrated me. Not again, because I'm worried about myself, not worried about the big picture, like letting destroy the company or bad guys.
Yeah, but here's the deal. I think that employees are willing to do what they need to do, right? Most employees are not going to buck the system.
I did change it. I don't know if they checked on, but I did change my password.
The issue is,
or maybe it forced me to.
The issue is if there's no policy.
Yeah.
So it's like the wild, wild west. Yeah. Oh, well, I use this password, and then I use this password. No, there has to be a password policy in your organization. Right? Who has control and who is allowed to change passwords, right? You have to think through all that stuff, right? That's really important. Number two is, what's the email policy for the organization, right? Where are people allowed to check email? Okay. So think about it in two parts. Number one, internal, right? When I'm in the office, and I think this really comes to light because now we have, with us being, going through the pandemic, and we have so many people now working from home.
Yeah.
When people work from home, we take them out of a very secure environment. Yeah. And now we've got to protect them.
Yeah. Because you have, at your office, you got the firewall in place. Let's say you have a good IT company like you guys, you've got everything in place there in the office, right? And then all of a sudden you let all these people go home and then go in through the security. And then anyway, I keep going. I can totally see the problem. I mean, you build up Fort Knox around it. Now all of a sudden you let all the, let all the people.
So what's the email policy? Okay. So it's one thing to have it, how we're checking email when we're inside the organization, but how do we check email outside the organization? Right. Because like we can put, some phone, protocols in place
that home laptop, but what is the laptop have? What is it? A personal laptop, a business laptop, your phone? Is that the type of things you're talking about? Or I'm on a vacation, even though maybe it's limited now. Still, you're not at your house. You're at the place I work out at that has free Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the deal. Never use public Wi-Fi, right? That's the one thing that I teach with our executives is, listen, do not use public Wi-Fi. That is a danger that you don't need to do. You can use your hotspot on your phone. If you don't have a VPN, use the hotspot on your phone.
Okay.
All right. Pro tip number 2.
How about this? How about, because with me, is this not good? I mean, I either go to data, right? I don't have a VPN, data, or I don't. I used to, but I don't use the public anymore, just because I think it just seems. It even says
it's a wild west.
It even says not secure right on the thing. When you click on it, it says not secure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about it is whether you have to put in a password, you don't have to put in a password is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right. It may, back when we were doing this stuff in 2000, holy cow, this is going to date me, right? We were rolling out Wi-Fi in hotels in 2003 when Cisco bought Aeronet, and we were doing a bunch of stuff. It's totally different, ball game. Don't use public Wi-Fi. Use your phone or use a VPN. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. So what's the email policy to check your email outside of the office? Should you, as a CEO, right, or a business owner, allow people to check their business email on the phone? That is a legitimate question. Should you be allowed them to check on their iPad or tablet or whatever they're using? Should you allow them to be able to log in and use it from home, right? Because here's the deal. Email is typically hosted. It's either at Office 365, most everyone's at Office 365 or on Gmail. Should you allow people to access their email from externally? And here's the deal. I get that it's convenient. I get that you want to have, but every time that you do that, you lose a piece of security. So there's always the trade-off between convenience and security. Always a trade-off, right? It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Blessing and a curse. It's a trade-off. Productivity. Business owners need to make those decisions, right? Maybe it's not for everyone. Maybe it's just for a few people. And if it's for these few people, then we're gonna tighten it down a little bit. So, what's the email policy for checking email outside the office? That has to be a discussion. Right. And if you're going to allow people to access email offsite, great. Then you're going to have to give them some parameters about the do's and don'ts. Because like I said, once that device leaves the office, I mean, we got to protect it when it's in the office. And it's not 100% in the office. It's never a 100%. Let's be clear about that. But it becomes a lot less when we get it outside the environment. So password policy. Email policy. Those are two things that you have to have. Now, I'll tell you this. We have a blank template for internet usage policy that if anyone wants to PM me or work through you or get back to me, I'm more than happy to email that off to you. And it's a DOCX and you can use that. Even if you don't use anything in there, there's some really interesting points that you should look at and figure out what you need to be doing that. Okay. So that's the C-suite. Right. So that's, as a business owner, I put on my business hat. These are the things I need to be talking about.
Right.
That no one's talking about. Other stuff, hardware, software, firewalls, 2FA, VPNs, whatever. There's a lot of talk out there. But I'm talking about practical stuff. Okay. Practical stuff. Now let's talk about the employee. What should the employee be doing? And how do we educate the employee to protect the organization? Because ultimately, when you protect the organization, you're protecting yourself.
Right.
Right. Because if you get hacked, an employee gets hacked and gets breached and get compromised, the entire organization is at risk, to include the employee. Okay.
And then for me, I'm thinking then the next step is and possibly even vendors and customers.
Well, it's all one big thing, right? The way that this crazy stuff works is the fact that your vendor might get compromised. And in there, you're a customer, either on the AP or the AR side, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And if they get spoofed and then they're sending you emails, right? How many times have you been sent a bogus email from someone and you sent a note to them and they had no idea that they were compromised?
I tell you, I'm starting to kind of get a pattern, and I just go, hey, I think you got hacked. And most of the time, where they say, thank you, I did.
Yes.
Because it just doesn't look, hey, you got to see this,
Yep.
hey, I mean, the same, it's kind of the
Check
same.
out this video.
Yeah, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They're in it. Like, oh, I'm like, I'm not
dangerous.
clicking on that.
And when you think about it from a social engineering term, they're preying on the human behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, you have that's
true, because like everybody wants to see themselves, So, oh yeah, I will click on it.
Yeah. Okay. So for the employees, number one, absolutely positively number one, every employee has to meticulously scrutinize every email that has a link in it. Okay. If it has a link in it, right?
Wow.
If it has a link in it, you need to be double and triple checking that thing. And here's what I like to say. Number one, reply and verify. Write that down. Reply and verify. If you get an email that's got a link in it and it's got some crazy language and someone's asking for urgency and there's a couple of things that are misspelled and it just looks a little bit wonky, the best thing that you can do is hit the reply button and say, hey, what's going on? Right? Yeah. So that's number one, reply and verify. Number two, forward the email into your support team.
Oh.
Just hit the forward button. And if, like for our customers, we see a lot of that stuff. We just want it to be automatic. Send that thing into us and we'll just look at it, right? And then we get to educate them a little bit more. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, pick up the phone and call the person and ask them.
Yeah. Seriously,
is there anything wrong with that? You don't think I would appreciate someone calling and say, hey, listen, Chris, I just got this, email from you, wanting to change your ACH information. Yeah, I appreciate the phone call.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's very easy. Listen, I understand that our employees want to get their jobs done, but we also want them to be, responsible.
Yeah.
Right. So here's the deal. Employees have to be, right, very curious, skeptical, right, with every email that has a link. Now, I would say every email, but I would say every email that wants you to click and do something, that takes you somewhere.
Right.
And we can go through some other things, and that we don't have time for that. So, number one, reply and verify. Number two, forward the email. Number three, pick up the phone. Right? That seems funny, but pick up the phone, make a phone call.
Yeah.
One of the things that you talked about, definitely enable two-factor authentication. Okay. If you're using Office 365 or using Gmail hosted, you really need to have two-factor authentication. Okay. Now, here's what you need to understand. Two-factor authentication could give you a false sense of security. Let me just tell you that there are ways around 2FA. Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but it's very, very dangerous. But it's just one of those things where it's just kind of keeping the honest guy out. It's another layer in the security layer. Okay. Now, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to kind of leave it with this. I know you probably got some questions and whatnot, but number 5, this is very, very important. Stop creating your own passwords.
Oh.
Right? Human behavior. Right? Now, here's what's interesting, what you said earlier. It actually is not beneficial for people to change their password every 30 days or every 90 days, right? Because do you think those passwords get stronger the more you ask, or the weaker the more you ask?
I'm betting that if somebody could get in and look what you did, there's a pattern you probably follow.
Well, listen,
you change your password,
right?
You use this password, you use that password. Yeah.
Right? They get weaker. The more times you ask someone to change the password, the less, because they just want it to be easy and easier.
Yeah.
Okay. Stop creating your own passwords. There are a couple of programs that you can use. Actually, are free, but as the organization, it might be worth putting that as a piece of your software. One is Keeper. 2 is Dashlane. Number 3, which I use, and we have customers that are using them, is LastPass.
Oh,
okay.
So
Yeah, LastPass, very powerful. Okay, you have one master password that you're not going to memorize because it's going to be crazy, and you're going to keep that in one place, and you're going to let LastPass. And the crazy thing with LastPass is that you can put it on your mobile phone, you can put it on your laptop, you put it on your desktop, and then you can put it on your wife's laptop.
Wow.
Okay, and let it manage all that stuff. You do not want your wife managing her passwords. No offense. It's the reality of where we are today. Stop creating your own passwords. Let them be a password generating tool. And part of the security is you need to have a password and really a username for every single login that you have. That's how you protect yourself, right? So
yeah, because there again is like the like makes common sense once you mention it, but usernames. I mean, let's say you were good at passwords, right? Let's say we're halfway decent. Most people, their usernames are very similar at work, at home. So there's another thing. If you have the opportunity,
human behavior, and that's what's being manipulated through social engineering. Okay. Now here's the thing. Number one, every company can and will be a target. It's just not for enterprise anymore, Scott. It's not. Right. And the thing about it is that for us, as much as the executives complain about the password policy, executives are significantly targeted, right? Because here's the deal. Your email gets hacked, your signature says president or CEO. That then is taken out in the dark web, and that's cross-referenced with, 3 or 4 things, trying to find a similar thing, and bam. Now they know really where you're at, and they're building that profile, right? CEO, president, COO, right? Whatever the executive is, owner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we can't compromise for our business owners. We can't compromise for our executives. They actually need to have the highest, password policy. So we got the organizational, right, from a business owner standpoint, password policy, email policy, and then at the employee level, right, scrutinize every single link in your emails, reply and verify, forward the email, pick up the phone call, right? Those are just 3 really simple things that can save people a lot of grief. Yeah. So that's just kind of put it in perspective, because you typically hear about it, but you don't understand like what's going on behind the scenes in this.
I've listened. No one's explained it that thoroughly before, which is great, Chris. I appreciate it, because like I said, it's always a couple things, and then just kind of like, oh, not a big deal. But
it's once you kind of
but once you start talking about dark webs and all, I mean, it's about selling data, and it makes just total sense that when you get hacked, they're gonna, and then also what you said was non-sensitive information, but if they're over here building an avatar, right, they might have got the last 2 pieces to say, yep, this is absolutely that profile. They've got everything they need to do whatever bad thing they want to do to that person.
Yeah, they're matching
passwords, your names, your email, your usernames, your
kids' names, the street that you're on.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The last product you bought off of online.
Yeah. Wow. So here's something for you. Is what about liability when it comes to employees? Because I would think that if an employee does something stupid, or that's probably a harsh thing, but even though, because a lot of times how it is, they have a policy, right? And they hand them around. I can see a lot of companies hand around a policy, and they go, oh yeah, blah blah. Oh yep, no, okay, sign it, get it over there, right? And then, oh, now dang it, I got it. So what happens if an employee, is there any liability on the employee?
Well, so I'm going to answer that with saying, first of all, I'm not an attorney, right? But I think the culture that we have in our organizations really needs to be looked at about how we're supporting our employees, right? Because you're exactly right. They go through orientation, they got to sign all the paperwork, and they got to do all this and that and whatever. the culture, right, really for cybersecurity needs to be an ongoing education inside your organization. It just has to be, because the only thing that,
rather than okay, now it's been 6 months, whatever. Now we're gonna do another little security orientation, and
yep,
they sit there and pay half attention looking at their phone. It really again, now you kind of explain it really, and then also what what it can do to the company, reputation. Plus, it could destroy a company if something really bad happened. I mean, so anyway, I guess that is a great way to look at it. Is you have to kind of make it part of the culture that, hey, to keep this company strong and secure, we have to take this seriously. This isn't something that we look at every 6 months, or so that's that. Yeah, is that what you recommend to companies?
yeah. I mean,
Your
there
customers?
has to be. Like I said, I'm not an attorney. I don't know
Yeah.
where it lays with
Right.
reliability and this and that and whom and
Yeah.
how. I just know that it's an ongoing threat that's not going away,
Yeah.
and the more that you can do, whether it's a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting, or you're
Right.
sending out, one of the things that we do, that we continue to put into place, because think about the security stuff that we go through.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're ongoing, but what's really cool is whatever we learn over here through this, we're implementing throughout our entire customer base. So there's a lot of great stuff that we do. But you can put together, monthly phishing campaigns where you put together a fake phishing email and you send it out to all of your employees, and then
Ah.
they click on the link, and you kind of like catch them. Right. It's just
Ah.
it's
Yeah.
repetition, right? It's
Yeah.
being top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another way that you could do it is put together a simple quiz, a 10 question quiz,
Yeah.
right? It's continuing education. And the thing about it is that you want to protect your employees, and you want your employees to protect you. It's bilateral. And quite frankly, what you teach them, right, to be mindful of email, they're going to be able to take in and protect their personal life.
Yeah.
And the more education that we can do from our employees into our organization, that's the only way that this stuff is going to stop. Right?
Yeah.
It's going to continue to be. There is no amount of hardware, there is no amount of software that can do it. Think about, and I'm not going to mention the name, but here in our part of the state, we had an organization, a hospital, that got compromised, and I got a letter in the mail. Right? What do you think they spend on security?
Yeah. A lot.
Okay, so if they're spending that much money on security, and we got a little guy down here that doesn't have the budget to do that, what's the common denominator? The employee.
People. You're helping me through this. Yeah, you're right. It is. It's employees, and you have a whole bunch of employees, and you can do all you want, but they're kind of the weak link. Is that trying to get them responsible.
Yeah, it's a cybersecurity, data security, whatever you want to call it, is big, right? And you got to be doing kind of different things, and it's just the lazy way to do it, and the ignorant way to do it is just to think that I'm going to have enough hardware and enough software to protect me. That's You have to add the practical side of it, which is the human side of it. And we've got to train our staff, train our employees, educate them, over-educate them, and empower them to understand what's going on.
Wow. Well, this is great. We're coming to the end of time here, but this is perfect. I love that, like I said, and I read, not a crazy but I've read stuff, and this has been a great, Chris. It's just really helped me. And I'm hoping that if there's some, business owner out there, executive out there that watches this, that they look at it and kind of realize if they are not paying attention to the risks, that maybe they need to start doing something. So hey,
so I'm just gonna throw this in here. Right, here's the deal, Scott. If people are looking for quote unquote a third party or an anonymous person to come in and look at what's going on in their organization, they can surely reach out to me, and we can make that happen, because it really, really is important. And the more our organizations put out there on the internet, their IT teams need to be very proactive. And if they're not having conversations about this, right, I'm hoping that a lot of the organizations and the CEOs and the owners of people who see this are writing this stuff down, and they're going right to their IT team and saying, okay, tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about this.
What are we doing about this? Not what about us? What are you doing about it for us? Putting a game plan together. So perfect. Hey, and then tell us real quick, Chris, again, speaking of leaders of companies, what company do you lead here in the Treasure Valley?
Yeah, Adams Technology Group, president and CEO. And we're rolling out. So Smatatech is our MSP, kind of our technology support desk. Manage a lot of companies, and we're having a lot more of these conversations. We are very proactive. We're not reactive. We want to be on the front end of this stuff. That's why I enjoy you having me on, because I get to talk and I get to share, I get to educate, and I get to empower people. Say, hey, I didn't know that, and now I get it. Now I got to make a change.
Cool. Well, what we'll do, Chris, is one for anybody out there. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I would definitely say email. But here's the deal: I like phone calls, and I like coffee. I'm always up for me.
Cool. Well, I'll make sure in the show notes too they have that there. But hey, I really, really appreciate it. This has been great stuff. And if it was up, I mean, if you're willing, I'd love to have you back to talk about. We did email this one. You either do another drill down or even another topic on helping businesses keep safe. So if you'd be up to it, I'd love to have you back. So
I appreciate that, Scott. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks.